This is going to begin Screencast 1. This is going to be for Unit 1, Lesson 2, and the title of Lesson 2 is Scientific Knowledge. Our essential question for this lesson is, how do scientists develop explanations? And by the end of the lesson, you should be able to analyze how scientists choose their methods, develop explanations, and identify support for a theory. Please just make sure that you remember also that you are required, before you turn these lessons in, that you are required to go and answer all of the active reading questions. So as soon as the lesson begins and the numbering begins, that's when you need to start answering questions. Okay? If it tells you to do something, try to do it. If it tells you to do something and you have to completely do it on a separate sheet of paper, it tells you to do a research project or something like that, I'm not worried about those. But you do need to, if it tells you to highlight or put a question mark or something like that, you do need to make sure that you do those also. Okay? So let's get started with the lesson. I'm on page 22 in Unit 1, Lesson 2. How do scientists choose their methods? How do scientists decide what they're going to do to investigate whatever phenomenon they're trying to find more about? Okay, scientists plan investigations to study a specific problem or question. The goal is to develop a scientific explanation, an explanation as to why something is the way that it is, a scientific explanation. Each problem or question is unique. Therefore, each investigation requires a certain method and the proper tools. Okay? How are we going to decide what to use and how to do our investigation? Well, there's a couple of things that we need to consider. Number one, we need to consider what tools we have available. All right? So now I'm on page 23. Sometimes scientific investigations are limited by the available tools. Maybe you don't have everything you'd like to have. Scientists did not discover cells until there were microscopes. No one had seen the moons of the planet Jupiter before there were telescopes. So you are limited sometimes by the tools that you have available. Okay? You can read the rest of the paragraphs under tools available. But go down to the bottom. The last sentence in that column says, a large part of a scientist's education involves learning to understand the meaning of data collected by scientific tools. So it's important that you understand the data that your tools are collecting and what to do with that data. Okay? All right, the second thing that's going to influence how we decide to do an investigation, what method we choose, is by knowing what the subject is that we're studying. Okay? So the first thing we needed to consider was what tools were available. The second thing we need to consider is, what are we studying? What is the subject of our study? Okay? So now I'm under the red heading that says by the subject under study. Two types of scientific investigations are experiments and field work. That's really important. I will ask you that. Experiments involve scientists controlling different variables during an investigation. In contrast, I'm at the next paragraph. In contrast, scientists doing field work make observations of what is around them. Okay? Instead of controlling variables, they try to determine what variables are at work and how they relate to each other. Okay? So when you do field work, it's kind of like you go out to that naturally occurring environment and you sit and you watch and you see how things occur. It's not something that you can bring back and put in the lab. Okay? So sometimes, I'm down at the bottom, sometimes a scientist will do field work and then take a specimen back to the laboratory to do more testing. So they may do some field work and then there might be a little piece of something that they can go and look at under the microscope or something like that. Okay? But an excellent example of something that you would have to study by using field work, if you were like Jane Goodall, who was a lady that did a lot of research on chimpanzees and learning how they behaved and what their socialization, social structure was, that they use tools, how they interacted, all this stuff. She had to do that in the chimpanzee's natural environment. So she had to do field work. She couldn't do that in a laboratory setting. Okay? Okay, so this is what my page 22 and 23 look like. I went back and I highlighted a couple of things that I read to you guys. Put a bracket around a couple of things that were important or underlined. Also, I'm just reminding you that you do have AB down at the bottom, and that is something that you will need to fill out before you turn in your lesson. Okay?